jolly Christmas. It's the best time of the year. Now I don't know if there'll be snow, but have a cup of cheer. Have a holly jolly Christmas. And when you...
So about 5 years ago, I uploaded Frosty Returns, an Unlikely Classic, a video about me talking about the 1995 CBS animated special Frosty Returns. And don't get me wrong, it's okay. It's a fine video, but it's kind of ass. I mean, it was one of my more popular videos back in the day. It's sitting around 3,000 views right now. But I think in a more positive sense, I think it's more of a testament to how far I've come in terms of content creation, my script writing, my editing, like just in a general sense, like pretty much everything. So I figured, how about instead of diving into another Christmas special like I do every year, that I do something a little bit different and go back and revisit an old special to see if it still stands the test of time. So I want to kind of do it in the typical DJR fashion of stealing other people's ideas and pointing out some pros and cons, similar to Wendigoon's Greylock versus the Painter video. So if that interests you, stick around and we'll get into it. But before we go into what I liked and disliked about this special, I think it's pretty important to gain an understanding of the special and how it came to be. So contrary to the name Frosty Returns, this isn't actually the second special in the series, nor is it really a true sequel. Allow me to explain. So of course you had the classic 1969 Rankin Bass special, Frosty the Snowman, but you also had two more specials in between that one and Frosty Returns. So in December of 1976, Frosty's Winter Wonderland aired on ABC, and that served as the sort of definitive sequel to Frosty the Snowman. This one was made by Rankin Bass as well. In July of 1979, Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July was created and actually had a 1 week long theater run in Lexington, Kentucky, since this clocked in as the longest special in this series, I guess, at around 97 minutes. Although it flopped in theaters and plans for expansion into other theaters were canceled, in November of that year, it aired on ABC. So this special was created by Rankin Bass as well, but since it was not a Christmas special, as well as it deviated from the original formula, but it was also not animated and made in the iconic Rankin Bass stop motion style. Because of that, the film wasn't necessarily seen as canon in the Frosty the Snowman cinematic universe. Same with the next special in the series, 1992's Frosty Returns. The reason I say 1992 now is because it was produced in 1992 and then released to video in 1993 by Family Home Entertainment in their Christmas Classics series line of videos, and then finally aired on CBS in December of 1995. Frosty Returns was a return to the original formula, but more importantly, it was the first special in the series not created by Rankin Bass. Instead, the special was created by Bill Melendez Productions and Broadway Video. Bill Melendez, if you're familiar with many of the early Peanuts specials, is not a new name, as he was responsible for Charlie Brown Christmas, Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, Great Pumpkin, You're in Love, Charlie Brown, just countless Peanuts specials. He also started by working as an animator at Disney, working on some of their earlier films like Pinocchio, Bambi, and Fantasia. Broadway Video was started in 1975 by Lorne Michaels, who was responsible for the NBC late-night comedy staple Saturday Night Live. Thus, many of the voice actors were comedians or those who had appeared on SNL. We'll talk about them later. Broadway Video also owned the rights to Rankin Bass's pre-1975 library, including the classic Frosty the Snowman special. Due to Broadway Video's ownership of the original, Frosty Returns would often follow Frosty the Snowman on CBS airings, which led to the misconception that Frosty Returns was the sequel to Frosty the Snowman. The special would also come packaged with many of Frosty the Snowman's DVD and video releases, which didn't really help to kind of stray away from the misinformation that Frosty Returns was a sequel to Frosty the Snowman. When Frosty the Snowman went to NBC in 2024, CBS stopped airing Frosty Returns, which is not available on streaming services and can only be found on DVD, VHS, Blu-ray, and YouTube. The special, although staying somewhat true to the original formula of Frosty helping a young girl, still deviates from the original, as it is not set in the same universe and has an entirely different cast of characters and voice actors. The special begins with a cold opening from the narrator, followed by the title card. The special takes place in the fictional town of Beansboro, with school being canceled due to a snow day. The kids break out in a musical number named We Love the Snow, with the adults coming in on the second verse to sing about how they hate the snow. We then come into the protagonist of the story, Holly DiCarlo. Her friend, Charles, comes in and the two practice for Holly's magic show for the town's winter carnival before Holly's hat blows away. Holly goes to search for her hat, running into her teacher, Miss Carbuncle, on the way, and finds her hat on a snowman who comes to life and introduces himself as Frosty. Holly's mom then comes into the frame, introducing a new aerosol spray named Summer Wheeze, which wipes out all the snow in a specific area within only a couple of seconds of spraying. Holly and Frosty run away to avoid the spray, and Mr. Twitchell, the antagonist of the story, is introduced, with his main goal to be crowned king of the winter carnival. He brings out Summer Wheeze cars, instigating a mass spraying of Beansboro to get rid of all the snow. The town embraces Summer Wheeze, even trickling down to the children, who all go back to school and detest the snow, even though they were just singing that they love the snow, with the reason being so that the snow can melt away and they would have 10 months of summer vacation, which would not happen in any school district in the world. Holly tells Frosty this, and he sings her another song named Let There Be Snow, which is about the joys of snow in winter. It's right after this song that Charles meets Frosty for the first time. Of course, since he's the smart, rational one, he doesn't believe that Frosty is alive at first, but after some convincing, the two save Frosty from certain death due to Summer Wheeze. Later, Frosty appears in the winter carnival to persuade the people to keep the snow around, singing a reprise of Let There Be Snow, which causes all the townspeople to reject Summer Wheeze and throw their cans out, joining arms and singing. Twitchell, in a fit of rage, attempts to run over Frosty, who then gets run off the ice castle and into a frozen pond. Frosty is crowned king of the winter carnival, and he allows Twitchell to wear the crown and ride in the toboggan. Frosty then leaves, which Holly is disappointed in, and the special ends with the narrator going to Winnipeg next. Okay, so let's get into the pros and cons. First, let's start with a pro, and that is the absolutely stacked voice cast. So as stated earlier, many of the voice cast were sketch comedy actors, and a few of which were members of the SNL cast. The narrator, the late Jonathan Winters, was an accomplished comedian, having earned 2 Grammy Awards, a Primetime Emmy, and a Hollywood Walk of Fame star in 1960. The voice of Mr. Twitchell, Brian Doyle Murray, is the brother of famous actor Bill Murray, so perhaps the most well-known by Gen Z viewers. Doyle Murray was the voice of the Flying Dutchman in SpongeBob. He also had some other film roles in Bill Murray films such as Ghostbusters 2 and Caddyshack, but also films in non-Bill Murray films such as National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and Wayne's World. Doyle Murray also had a couple runs with Saturday Night Live. The voice of Miss Carbuncle, Andrea Martin, played Aunt Viola in all 3 My Big Fat Greek Wedding films, as well as some other roles that you might remember, such as Aunt Miriam Pickles in the Rugrats movie and Lunch Lady Harriet in Recess, School's Out. The voice of Charles, Michael Patrick Carter, is perhaps the most obscure because he hasn't necessarily done anything since 1996, and he's been credited in some films like Child's Play and Milk Money, but they've been mainly smaller, more unknown roles. The voice of Lil DiCarlo, Holly's mother, the late Jan Hooks, was a member of SNL from 1986 until 1994, and also had some other smaller roles in shows like The Simpsons and 1985's Pee-wee's Big Adventure. The voice of Frosty, John Goodman, was most known for playing Fred Flintstone in 1994's The Flintstones, I'm kidding, of course. He was most known for playing Dan Connor in Roseanne, both the original and the failed spinoff. Goodman has also hosted Saturday Night Live 13 different times from 1989 to 2013. The only actress who was not an already established actor or actress at the time Frosty Returns aired was Elizabeth Moss, who played Holly DiCarlo. She was also the youngest in the cast, being only 13 when the special aired, which means she would have been in the ballpark of around 9 to 11 years old when the special was produced. Moss has gone on to have a very successful career, with her winning 2 Golden Globes, 2 Primetime Emmys, and a Tony Award nomination. So this cast was incredibly stacked in both film and television as well as comedy. And because of that, the voice acting is one of the high points in the entire special. So another pro that I want to point out is the production company behind it, which was Bill Melendez Productions. Bill Melendez, as I said earlier, directed the 1965 Christmas classic, A Charlie Brown Christmas. The talent of Melendez, as well as producer Lee Mendelson and Peanuts comic strip creator Charles M. Schulz, cannot be overstated, and the fact that Melendez was involved in the making of Frosty Returns just adds to the credibility of the special itself. So with that being said though, my first con with Frosty Returns is of course the animation. While A Charlie Brown Christmas's animation was also stilted and looked really cheap, that Christmas special went on to become a classic mainly because of its story, its characters, and the voice acting. Rather than casting adults, they had casted actual children. So it added sort of like a charm and kind of pushed more of that message that Christmas should not be commercialized, because rather than pay big bucks for a bunch of stars, they would just pick children off the street. That sounded really wrong. So while here in Frosty Returns, it's seen more as wonky and cheap. The budget for Frosty Returns is unknown, but it can be assumed due to the stacked voice cast that it was probably a lot, at least a decent amount. And the budget was likely higher than A Charlie Brown Christmas. The close-up faces look really bad. If you've seen Frosty Returns, you know what I'm talking about. And one that stands out that I even pointed out in my original video is this close-up of Holly's mother, Lil, which just looks really disturbing. Like it's just a basic eyes, nose, hair, and an open hole for a mouth. There's no tongue, there's no teeth. And that's pretty consistent with the rest of the close-up side profiles that are seen in the rest of the special. That is just like, it's really like, it's really unnerving. So some of the front-facing characters also look strange, but like then again, what front-facing character isn't? So I want to go back to the pros of the special, and that is the music of it. So the music of Frosty Returns was composed by Akron, Ohio's own Mark Mothersbaugh, who was the co-founder of the new wave group Devo, who was responsible for their hit song Whip It. Now whip it! But he's also created music for Rugrats, Rushmore, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, The Lego Movie, Rocket Power, Yo Gabba Gabba, Regular Show, Clifford the Big Red Dog, and a Minecraft movie. And for all my epic gamers out there, Mark also did the music for 2010's Skate 3. So safe to say, the music department's pretty qualified. But anyway, Wikipedia claims that there's only 2 songs, but technically there's 3. So the first is the Frosty the Snowman instrumental that is heard in the beginning. Another version of the song is seen in the credits with a full cast rendition. Little interesting tidbit is that for some of the international dubs of the special, rather than just use the English version of the outro song, they instead brought their international cast together and recorded their own rendition of the credits song, which is really interesting. Also, when did Frosty Returns air on Cartoon Network? So the second song is We Love the Snow. Wikipedia claims that it is a part of the song Let There Be Snow, and that this is a verse from the song. While it sounds the same, for the sake of brevity, we are just going to separate them. So We Love the Snow is the first original song that is heard shortly after the special starts. It's about how the children love the snow and how it brings out the happiness in them, and then the adults all hate it because it brings out nothing but cold, shoveling, and heating bills. So the last song that's heard in the special is the signature Let There Be Snow. This song is sung by Frosty shortly after Holly leaves class for reasons that we are going to discuss later. The song is similar to We Love the Snow and is about how the snow brings out the best in people. A reprise of this is actually heard in the climax of the special during the Winter Carnival when Frosty sings it. So now I want to talk about the characters. I hate to do this, but I'm gonna put them in cons. I'm honestly kind of mixed on them. I do like characters like Holly and Mr. Twitchell, but there are other characters that I just don't really understand. So let's kind of break through each of like the main characters, quote unquote. So let's start with Holly. So Holly DiCarlo is the resident outcast girl. For any character, at least any good character, there has to be once. And I categorize these for the sake of brevity as an outside want and an inside want. An outside want is something that they want in a smaller sense that they could achieve just like that. But an inside want is something that they want deeper down. For Holly, on the outside, she wants more friends, but on the inside, she wants to be taken more seriously. This is seen in the scene where her mother introduces Summer Weeze to her, where Holly tries to introduce Frosty, only to be disregarded by her own mother because she's just a child. This is also seen in the ending where Mr. Twitchell disregards her because she's a little girl, only for her to finally stand up to him and pretty much all of the adults who discount her. Then there's Charles, Holly's only friend. Charles is the resident smart one, the resident geek, the resident nerd, the resident chump. He isn't really anything else other than that. There aren't really any wants for Charles. I guess the best that I could describe it, like on the outside, he wants people to understand that snow is essential for life to survive on Earth, but on the inside, maybe he wants to make Holly happy. I don't know. He's not really given any exposition, and he kind of just stays the same throughout the special. Same for Frosty. I mean, he has an outside want, which is to help Holly, of course. That's the entire point of the special. But I guess find herself, but he doesn't really have an inside want or a bigger goal. That's not really explored much here. Mr. Twitchell is the only one who's really similar to Holly, where he has an outside and an inside want. His outside want is more power. He wants to conquer Beansboro's Winter Carnival and dominate Sorchelle's with Summer Weeze. On the inside, actually, I don't really know. I think it's probably the same as Holly, that he wants to be taken seriously. Another thing about the characters is that they don't really have any character development. Sure, there's Mr. Twitchell's change into a sled salesman and Holly learning Frosty's message of one friend is plenty, but other than that, most of the characters just remain the same at the end. The setting just returns to the status quo, and I really hate that. It's part of the reason why I don't really like sitcoms that much, because like nothing really changes. I mean, watch any episode of Family Guy, and the format is literally the same. Something happens at the beginning, something big changes throughout the episode, but it always reverts to the end, and then you have that, well, I'm glad everything's back to normal. So another con that I have with the special is the comedy in it. So rather than the comedy coming from the characters themselves and the slapstick situations they find themselves in, like something like a Charlie Brown Christmas, the comedy in Frosty Returns is more rooted in references. It's made apparent through the references and messages in the special that it is geared towards a slightly older audience. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like Frosty's gone wild over here, but you get the point. So there are references made to both Bing Crosby and MTV, two references that only someone who is over 13 or 14 at the time the special aired would be able to understand and find humorous. Other than that, there isn't really any comedy in the special. The only comedy that I found in the special is its memeability, which we'll talk about later. The point of the special being geared towards an older audience leads me to my last pro with the special, and that are the messages. I like the messages, both overlying and underlying. Let's start with the overlying. So, of course, there's the usual Christmas charm and learning to be nice to one another. But there's also a message about how snow is great and brings out the good in people, which, to my knowledge, is something that is not really explored much anywhere else. The closest I could think of, at least the stuff that I talked about, is Arthur's Perfect Christmas, as that's one of Arthur's wants for like a perfect Christmas. That's one of the things that he defines as a perfect Christmas. So there's also Frosty's line to Holly after being introduced to her for the first time, which is, and I quote, "One friend is a lot different than no friends, kid. One friend is plenty," which I believe is a very important one, and one for a lot of impressionable young people to hear, especially those who struggle with making friends. In terms of the underlying, the whole special is set in the backdrop of a global warming subplot. So like a Charlie Brown Christmas's underlying messages about the commercialization of Christmas. I stepped on my light. Are you kidding me? Frosty Returns tackles a more nuanced and grown-up problem. Throughout the special, there are references to global warming and the elimination of snow. So Charles even gives a class presentation on global warming and how if snow were to go away, life on Earth would disappear. The concept of Summer Wheeze itself is a de-icing spray that Mr. Twitchell creates, and when backlash comes to him from environmental activists, he literally gets rid of them. Like, seriously, this woman is never seen before in the rest of the special. Like, where did she go? Did Mr. Twitchell just, like, kill her? So now on to the story itself, which is another con for me. So the story itself is rather weak. It can be boiled down to one sentence. There is a new de-icing spray in Beansboro that threatens the snow, and it's up to Frosty and Holly to stop it before it's too late. That's pretty much the story. There isn't really anything else there. There's no side plots, there's no character development. Now, I can hear you already. DJR, it's a Christmas special. It doesn't need side plots. And yeah, I know, but it would have been nice and would have given it a little more nuance and a little more meat to sink your teeth into. So this leads me into my next con. We're going heavy on the cons, aren't we? And that is the pacing of the special. So I understand that you need to condense the story down to 22 minutes, but you need to make a story that can fit inside of it. A Charlie Brown Christmas's story fits perfectly and it's well paced, but here it just feels like constant whiplash and agony. So the pacing of the special can be summed up by the children's feelings towards the snow. At first, they love it, then literally 2 or 3 minutes later, hate it, and then love it at the end again. This part in particular, where the children criticize Charles's presentation, is such a crummy cop-out to advance the story. Literally 8 minutes prior, you were singing a jolly song about how much you loved the snow, and you have a snow day because of it. But then now it's all of a sudden, since you're back in class again, and through all of that, you make the argument that if the snow were to go away, it would melt in like January, then they would have 10 months of summer vacation. That's not what would happen. If that would work, nobody in Florida would go to school. Now, wait a minute. And yeah, I know it's a half-hour crummy Christmas special, but for this scene, you could have done something much better instead of confronting Charles with immediate ambivalence. So this leads me into the final thing that I'm going to talk about, and I saved it for the end because it happens at the end. The ending. That's a callback for those who don't know. So the ending of the special is very strange. It's very weird. Let me kind of break down the ending. Let me give you a Spark Notes refresher of it. So essentially we get to the Winter Carnival, with all of the stakes at its highest for Holly to hijack Mr. Twitchell's big moment to be crowned king of the Winter Carnival. Because apparently if Mr. Twitchell was crowned king of this small town Winter Carnival in like Michigan or something, that Holly and Frosty lose and that all is lost for the world. that summer weeds are just going to spread all over and then the snow is going to be gone. So Mr. Twitchell shows up with everyone being happy to see him. And then Frosty shows up and sings a reprise of Let There Be Snow. And literally immediately, the town is all cozy back up to the snow again. I guess maybe the moment that the town turns back into loving the snow is because of Frosty's song. Is directly because of Frosty's musical number, then sure, I guess that would make a lot more sense. But if you look at it in the context of the entire special, everything that we've talked about, especially the pacing about the children's feelings towards the snow, they love it, then they hate it, then they love it, then they hate it. It's like a love-hate relationship with the snow. And you would see how insane it is. So there's also the continuity error that I pointed out in my original video of Mr. Twitchell trying to run Frosty over and murder him. Would that even constitute as murder? Is Frosty even a person? That's another story for another day. So only to be blocked by a crowd of people, and he for some reason ends up on top of the ice castle. It's a nitpick, but definitely something that needed to be addressed. And that's it. That's the end of Frosty Returns. So in terms of our pros and our cons, I don't know if you can see. Let me try sitting down. So in terms of our pros and our cons, here they are. For our pros, we have voice cast, production company, music, and message. And for our cons, we have animation, characters, comedy, story, pacing, and the end. So now let's get on to the rating. I guess I will just do it on a scale of 1 to 10, so that'll be easiest. But before that, our sponsor. Nah, I'm just kidding. Nobody wants to sponsor this damn channel. But for real, I do want to give my own personal opinions on Frosty Returns. Personally, it's one of my favorite specials because it reminds me of those younger Christmas times of just sitting down and binging Christmas specials, which is something that I still do to this day every Christmas Eve for the past like 6 or 7 years. No, I'm not even joking. Like, it's 6 or 7 years. I'm not even joking. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. It's 6 or 7 years. So, but in terms of our pros and our cons, if we look at everything that we have here, I personally think that the cons outweigh the pros. Like, if you look at the pros, you have voice cast, message, music, production company. Sure, they're important, especially the voice cast. They gotta be good to hear. The message, you gotta put the message into their skulls. The music, you want to feel nice listening to it. And then the production company, I mean, you don't want like Filmation doing your Christmas special. But then you look at our cons and you see stuff like animation, characters, pacing, comedy, story, the end. It's not even comparable. The cons severely outweigh the pros. And so for that, I rate 1995's Frosty Returns a 4 out of 10. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. There are some small things that I like, but now I want to know, what did you think of Frosty Returns? Have you seen Frosty Returns maybe on television, online, on DVD, on VHS? Maybe you were one of the people who saw it when it first aired. If you have seen it, what did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments. So with that being said, thank you for watching. I wanted to do something a little different, especially because the last 3 out of the last 4 Christmas specials, that's the Charlie Brown, Nutcracker Scoob, and Arthur videos, all have gotten copyright hits, including Nostalgic Things 4. So I didn't want to go through that again, but also it's been 5 years since I made that Frosty Returns video, and it was the first video of this sort of modern era of my channel, and it's very interesting to see how far I've come as a content creator. It's also the 30th year since Frosty Returns aired on CBS in 1995, so I figured I'd do something a little special for it. One more thing before I leave you. So years ago, I discovered a small channel called the Channel of Egg that creates Frosty Returns shitposts, and they're actually really funny, which makes up for the comedy of the special since there's not really much in it. But I talked about memeability. This is the memeability right here. It's just such a niche community that I wanted to shout that out since it would be a perfect time to do so. So if you're into incredibly niche comedy about an incredibly niche Christmas special from 30 years ago, I suggest you go check them out. And Egg, keep doing you, bud. I also wanted to take this last moment to explain my gratitude to you guys. This year was the biggest year for my channel. I gained a lot of new fans and a lot of new eyes on the channel. It's been extremely overwhelming. It's been very, very nice to see that. So thank you, genuinely. I cannot thank you enough. And so this one's to you for another good year in 2026. So to my viewers, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, thank you for watching, and good night. Might want to turn the light off. Good grief.
Frosty the snowman was a fairy tale, they say. He was made of snow, but children know how he came to life one day. There must have been some magic in that old